It's 1943, and Japan's most secret military communications are being read like a newspaper. Every battle plan, every troop movement, every strategic decision, all exposed. The Americans had cracked the unbreakable Purple Code, and when Japanese High Command finally discovered the truth, their reaction was absolutely chilling. What they said in those rooms, behind closed doors, would reveal the exact moment they knew the war was already lost. 3 conversations, 3 revelations, and 1 devastating realization that changed everything. The perfect ambush. April 18, 1943. Admiral Yamamoto was Japan's greatest military mind. He planned the Pearl Harbor attack. He won battles across the Pacific. And now he was about to take a routine inspection flight. His staff sent out the travel details using their most secure code. Purple was unbreakable. That's what everyone believed. The message went out at 6 a.m. Tokyo time. By 7 a.m., American codebreakers in Hawaii had read every word. They knew Yamamoto's exact route. They knew his departure time. They knew which planes would escort him. 16 American P-38 fighters took off from Guadalcanal. They flew 400 miles over open ocean. They arrived at the exact coordinates. At the exact moment, Yamamoto's plane appeared right on schedule. The fighters opened fire. Japan's greatest admiral died in the jungle. But here's what nobody in Tokyo understood yet. This wasn't luck. This was something far more terrifying. How long had America been reading their secrets? The impossible pattern. 3 weeks later, a young intelligence officer in Tokyo noticed something strange. Lieutenant Tanaka was reviewing battle reports. He saw a disturbing pattern. American forces were always in the right place. They knew about supply convoys before ships left port. They intercepted submarines in the middle of nowhere. They avoided Japanese traps perfectly. 1 time, that's luck. 5 times, that's suspicious. 20 times, that's impossible. Tanaka wrote a report. He suggested the unthinkable. Maybe, just maybe, the Americans were reading their codes. His superior officer laughed at him. "Purple cannot be broken," the colonel said. "It uses a machine with billions of combinations." Tanaka's report went into a file. Nobody read it. Nobody cared. Meanwhile, Admiral Koga took over Yamamoto's position. He immediately planned a major offensive in the Solomon Islands. He sent the battle plans using Purple Code. 3 days later, American forces were waiting in perfect defensive positions. How many Japanese soldiers were walking into traps? The German warning. June 1943, a coded message arrived from Berlin. German intelligence had discovered something alarming. Their own Enigma code had been compromised. British codebreakers were reading everything. The Germans had proof, mathematical proof. They sent an urgent warning to their Japanese allies. "Check your codes immediately," the message said. "The enemy may be reading your communications." Japanese High Command held an emergency meeting. Admiral Koga sat at the head of the table. General Sugiyama from the army attended. So did the intelligence chiefs. They reviewed the German warning. Then they reviewed their own codes. The Purple machine was brilliant. It was created by their best engineers. It had never failed them before. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Their conclusion? The Germans are paranoid. Our codes are different from Enigma, they decided. Purple uses a completely different system. They filed the German warning away. They changed nothing. The very next week, another Japanese convoy was ambushed. All 12 supply ships were sunk. What would finally make them believe the truth? Operation Vengeance. Evidence. By August 1943, more officers were asking questions. How did the Americans know Yamamoto's exact location? The flight plan was only sent to 6 people, all of whom were trusted commanders. All of them were investigated. No spies were found. No leaks were discovered. But the questions wouldn't go away. A senior cryptographer named Captain Ito did his own analysis. He looked at 30 recent engagements. In 28 of them, American forces had perfect intelligence. They knew Japanese strength, they knew timing, they knew locations. The math was clear. This wasn't luck or intuition. This was precise information. Ito wrote a classified report. He calculated the probability. The chance of this happening randomly? Less than 1 in 10 million. He presented his findings to naval intelligence. They read his report. They saw his calculations. They looked at the evidence, and then they made a decision that would cost thousands of lives. They chose to believe in Purple's invincibility instead. Why couldn't they accept the obvious truth? The pride before the fall. Understanding why requires understanding Japanese military culture. The Purple Machine was a source of national pride. Japan's cryptographers were considered the best in the world. Admitting the code was broken meant admitting failure. It meant admitting their enemies were smarter. For the high command, this was unthinkable. There was another problem, a bigger problem. If Purple was compromised, every major decision for 2 years was exposed. Every battle plan, every strategy, every secret. The Americans knew everything. This meant the war situation was far worse than anyone realized. Accepting this truth meant accepting that Japan might lose. The psychological weight was too heavy. So they convinced themselves it wasn't possible. American technology is inferior, they said to each other. They cannot break our codes. They created explanations for every ambush. Spies, radar, lucky guesses. Anything but the truth. Meanwhile, American codebreakers were reading messages in real time, sometimes faster than the intended Japanese recipients. The one-sided intelligence war continued. How long could denial last against mounting evidence?
The Turning Point Battle. November 1943. Japan planned Operation Aro, a massive carrier strike against American forces. Admiral Koga personally designed the operation. He sent detailed orders to his fleet. The attack would come from multiple directions. It would be a complete surprise. Victory was certain. The orders went out via Purple Code on November 5th. American Admiral Halsey read those same orders on November 6th. He repositioned his entire fleet. He moved carriers to intercept positions. He placed submarines along Japanese approach routes. He prepared fighters for the exact timing of the attack. When Japanese planes arrived, they flew into a wall of anti-aircraft fire. American fighters were already in the air, waiting. The Japanese lost 121 aircraft in 2 days. The Americans lost only 11 planes. Operation Aro was a complete disaster. Back in Tokyo, Admiral Koga was devastated. He couldn't understand how the Americans knew. But now, finally, some officers were ready to speak the forbidden truth. What did they say behind closed doors? The first admission. December 1943. A secret meeting was called. Only the highest-ranking officers attended. No written records were kept. What was said in that room stayed in that room. But years later, one participant's diary revealed fragments. Captain Ito presented his evidence again. This time, people listened. "Gentlemen, we must face reality," he said. The room was silent. Admirals and generals shifted uncomfortably. Ito continued. "The probability of random chance is mathematically impossible. The Americans are reading our codes. One admiral stood up, Vice Admiral Fukudome. His face was red with anger, not at Ito, at the situation. "If this is true," he said slowly, "then we have been fighting blind for 2 years." The words hung in the air. Another officer spoke up. "What do we do now?" This was the critical question. If they admitted Purple was broken, they'd have to tell the Emperor. They'd have to explain how this happened. They'd have to take responsibility. The meeting ended with no decision, just shock and growing fear. Would they finally change their codes? The bureaucratic nightmare. Here's where it gets truly unbelievable. Even after admitting the problem, Japan couldn't fix it quickly. The Purple Machine was used across the entire military. Changing codes meant building new machines, training new operators, distributing everything to hundreds of locations, ships at sea, islands across the Pacific, embassies worldwide. The logistics were overwhelming. Plus, there was a darker problem. If they suddenly changed everything, the Americans would know they'd discovered the breach. Current operations would be exposed. They decided on a compromise solution. They would reduce Purple usage gradually. They would develop a new code system slowly. They would mix in other encryption methods. In other words, they would keep using the compromised system while transitioning. This decision was catastrophic. It meant American codebreakers kept reading Japanese secrets for months. While Japan slowly changed systems, meanwhile, General MacArthur was planning his return to the Philippines. Every Japanese defensive position was known. Every troop strength was documented. Every supply line was mapped. All thanks to Purple intercepts. What did Japanese commanders say when the invasion came? The Philippines disaster. October 1944. American forces landed in the Philippines. Japanese commanders were shocked by American precision. Every defense was countered. Every reinforcement was intercepted. Every escape route was blocked. It was like the Americans had a map of Japanese thinking. Because they did. They were reading every order in real time. Admiral Toyota sent desperate messages to his fleet. Americans read them before his own ships did. He ordered submarines to intercept positions. American destroyers were already there waiting. He called for air support. American fighters ambushed them at the assembly point. After 2 weeks of disaster, Toyota sent a message to Tokyo. This message was not in Purple code. It was hand-delivered by courier. "The enemy knows our every move," he wrote. "We are not fighting Americans. We are fighting ghosts who read minds." For the first time, a field commander stated the truth directly. The Americans weren't just good. They weren't just lucky. They had complete intelligence superiority. The message reached Tokyo on November 1st. How did High Command finally respond? The Breaking Point Conversation. November 1944. Emperor Hirohito demanded answers. Why were they losing so badly? Admiral Toyota was called to Tokyo. He met with the Supreme War Council. This time, he didn't hold back. "Your Majesty, we are fighting with our plans exposed." The room silenced. Toyota explained everything: the impossible ambushes, the perfect American timing, the intercepted convoys. Either we have thousands of spies, or they are reading our codes. General Umezu interrupted. That's impossible. Purple cannot be broken. Toyota's response was brutal. Then explain how they knew Admiral Yamamoto's flight path. Explain how they ambushed Operation Aro. Explain the Philippines. Nobody could. The Emperor spoke. "What are you saying, Admiral?" Toyota took a breath. "I believe the Americans have been reading our most secret communications for at least 2 years, possibly longer." The words were finally spoken aloud, in front of the Emperor. No more denial, no more excuses. The truth was on the table. What happened after this devastating admission? Too little, too late. January 1945, Japan finally stopped using Purple Code. 2.5 years too late. They distributed new code systems, but by now, the war was already lost. American forces were closing in on the home islands. The Philippines were retaken. Iwo Jima would fall in March, Okinawa in June. The damage from Purple was irreversible. How many battles were lost because of it? We'll never know exactly. But historians estimate it shortened the Pacific War by at least 1 year. Japanese soldiers walked into traps. Hundreds of ships were sunk at sea. Dozens of aircraft were ambushed, all because their secrets were being read in real time. Japanese High Command finally acknowledged this in internal documents. "The Purple Compromise," one report stated, "represents the greatest intelligence failure in our military history." But these words came too late. The atomic bombs were 2 months away. The war was ending, and the men who refused to believe the truth for so long never publicly admitted their mistake. What did they say in private after the surrender? The final admission. September 1945. After Japan surrendered, American intelligence officers interviewed Japanese commanders. They wanted to know when Japan discovered Purple was broken. Admiral Toyota gave them a shocking answer. He said, "We suspected it in mid-1943. We confirmed it by late 1943. But we did not fully act on this knowledge until early 1945. The American officer was stunned. "You knew for over a year and kept using it?" Toyota nodded slowly. Changing our entire communication system during war was deemed too difficult, too disruptive. We